Hey, what's up, Street Talks? Eric from the Eric from Street Photography blog. So I just want to do a quick video with you, just sharing some rando turbo thoughts I had about just life and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about, but the first question I'm just kind of curious about is why ask for feedback. So, I started arsbeta.com with my buddy Kevin, Cindy, Annette, also with June, and also help from my buddy Ben Mills. And I'm kind of an expert in photography now, and so a lot of people asking me for feedback, advice, and stuff like that, and I'm very willingful to give it. But I guess maybe the problem is it's been a while since I've actually, asked other people for feedback because I'm such a master of my domain. So actually a new thing that I've been asking a lot of feedback for is when it comes to lifting weights, powerlifting, and so there's a bunch of guys at the gym who are way stronger than me, who could bench 3 plates or squat 4 plates or deadlift 5 plates or whatever. And so I asked them a lot for feedback, for suggestions, ideas, and so forth. And part of it's actually really, really fun because I get to socialize with people, kind of get some new interesting ideas like, wow, I didn't know you could squat every day, if that's even an option. So the good thing about asking people for feedback or thoughts and stuff like that, it kind of increases your optionality in terms of just knowing what's possible. But also one of the downsides of asking for feedback is sometimes, people are kind of a little bit closed-minded in terms of how they approach things. So in some ways, asking too much for feedback could actually be a detriment because then you start to get trapped in other people's line of thinking. And I think one of the best things to do is maybe just kind of ask for tips, because tips are interesting is that you could just kind of take it or leave it. And it's actually funny because oftentimes the notion of tips is so critiqued because they're like, oh, tips are not the source of true infinite wisdom and knowledge. But I'm like, yo, this is the great thing with tips is you can either take it or leave it. And so maybe it's just better to ask people for certain tips and you could just kind of self-experiment. And so with feedback, I feel like it's just a good chance to inject some new ideas with you and then to maybe expand your mind of knowing what's possible, what's not possible. And I prefer feedback which actually opens up your mind rather than close your mind. So for example, another way maybe I was even thinking about feedback is don't just ask people for feedback, is maybe you could just even self-feedback yourself in the sense that you see how other people do something and then you kind of emulate that. So for example, when I was doing a lot of deadlifts and doing conventional, and I started to see a lot of really strong guys at the gym doing sumo style. And so I kind of experimented with it, and as a consequence, actually all my lifts also went up too. And so it's sometimes the thing that's interesting with feedback or asking other people for help or advice is that just kind of look at what people are actually doing. It's, this kind of similar to this piece of advice I got from Nassim Taleb, is essentially don't ask people for investing advice, just ask them what's in their portfolio, because then people have skin in the game. So same thing comes with anything, is that you don't always have to ask people for feedback or help or whatever. Just kind of see what they do and just kind of judge for yourself. And I also know that sometimes, and this is just kind of getting deeper into the psychology, is that oftentimes when you ask for feedback, you do something, you ask an expert for feedback, it's because actually we're uncertain of ourselves. We're a little bit, obviously we want to improve, but by asking somebody for feedback in terms of how to improve, in some ways you're actually making the other person greater than you, is that you're thinking that, oh, this person is better than me, smarter than me, more experienced than me, and I put more trust in them than myself. And actually, I do think it is possible to become a great individual or a great artist or whatever, just purely through self-experimentation. It might take you a little bit longer, perhaps, but one of the big benefits of self-experimentation is that you get to innovate and pioneer new ways of doing things. So for example, even a super way that I approach powerlifting is I just do heavy singles and I just try to PR at least once a week or so. And everyone else will tell me that I'm crazy, but it seems like it's actually working pretty good. And so I'm kind of grateful that I just kind of experimented and tried out a new approach that wasn't, new. And same thing with blogging, photography, street photography, YouTube, whatever, is sometimes just following your own gut and just kind of experimenting with things just for the sake of it, because of your own personal curiosity. I think it's kind of a cool thing. Like even the thing I was just thinking about was, oh man, how come nobody does black and white videos or vlogs? I'm like, I might start experimenting with that. Oh, I have this Lumix G9 and I have 4K at 60 FPS. Why not just experiment with that? And I've been looking at a lot of like Frank Miller comics, 300, and now Sin City. And I'm actually super re-inspired by just working on black and white stuff and this film noir, like even working these super high contrasty angles and stuff like that. So I think maybe just in life and stuff like that, asking for feedback is generally a good thing, but we shouldn't get trapped into just like asking feedback for the sake of it, because I also feel that the problem by asking for feedback is that when you ask for feedback, you're not making yourself culpable. So for example, you ask somebody for feedback and then you fuck up, then you kind of have somebody you could actually blame. And so I'm just thinking like, why would you approach your life where you want to blame anybody else but yourself? And maybe it's kind of a fear that we're too afraid to take 100% responsibility for ourselves, our actions, and our mode of life and stuff like that. So I would just kind of encourage you and, have you think to yourself, how much faith do I put in myself? So if you're an absolute newbie, yeah, asking for tips, feedback is kind of a good thing. But I would say once you advance and you become more self-confident in yourself, you don't really need to ask for feedback no more. You could just ask for tips, or maybe sometimes you could even ask people feedback just because people like giving feedback. So if you want people to like you, ask for feedback, which is kind of just a psychological trick that I personally discovered. But ultimately know that whenever you ask for feedback, ask for tips, suggestions, advice, all the knowledge you're given by other people, you make the decision what to keep, what to reject. So think of your own accumulation and your own knowledge as adding, subtracting, augmentation, removing, and you're the ultimate filter for education, for knowledge and truth and so forth. So don't play yourself, have deep faith in yourself, know that you're capable of really, really great things in life, and that you're going to be the one to continue to experiment with yourself, treat yourself like an experiment of one, and just kind of treat your life as a fun experiment to see how far you can fly. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Peace out.